good friend and client, Maura D. Varadinas, and she and her husband Pete hired us to help design their house. It's a 3-story brick row house. It's pretty typical in Philadelphia, this kind of house, and we're doing a foam-free deep energy retrofit that's guided by passive house principles. And I wanted Maura to just talk a little bit about her history in the neighborhood and why they bought this house and what she's excited about.
So I grew up in this neighborhood, which has been rapidly gentrifying, but was just a working class, kind of Irish, Catholic, Polish neighborhood full of churches and bars. I grew up on this very block. I moved here when I was 3. Across the street, we were already kind of in over our heads, not quite having the budget for the project in the most basic form. We kind of figured we'd make it happen and make it work as we went. And initially weren't planning on doing this deep energy retrofit. We were going to do a typical spray foam, but Jeremy really convinced our GC and ourselves otherwise. We figured it was a good opportunity to kind of put our money where our mouth is, and we claim that sustainability is really important to us, and create our, forever home in a way that we could be proud of and know that we were doing the thing that was best for the environment, but also best for us and our family, and setting a good model for the rest of the city in row home renovations.
One of the parts of the story that I think is really interesting is where he said it's going to cost a little bit more money. And as at least the apocryphal version I remember is you're like, well, cool, we just won't do the 3rd floor then right now, right? This was just and so I just feel like nobody does that. It was like, well, we'll just take money out of the entire part of the project and dump it into the building envelope because that's gonna make a big difference.
Right.
My name is Samir Patel. I work for Bright Common Architecture. Most of our projects are revolving around passive houses, and although this one's not going for certification, this is kind of a really good example of what we can do, especially with some old housing stock that's littered all over the coast. There's some key features here that I can point out. Probably one of the main ones would be these old windows. These are the original double pane windows. Nothing special by any means, but we worked with the clients, and the clients made a great decision to keep these.
So all the new openings on the 1st floor have the passive windows for the rest of the house. We'll get those later, and we'll keep with what we have. I need X, Y, and Z to make me happy, but I don't need to have the most amazing imported tile in my bathroom, or these great marble countertops, or put new floors in the house. We're going to use what's there, right? So kind of figuring what we can sacrifice in the short term so that the long term is done well, and then gradually, as we can afford, replace it.
One of the great things is Juan Levy, our contractor, did a great job of installing these so that they can be removed easily and the new windows put in when the budget works for that, so that it maintains the air sealing and the enclosure. Another thing to point out here is all the exterior walls are wrapped with Intello and blown in cellulose insulation behind them. So that gives us, vapor control, moisture control, air control, and then a really good insulation behind that. So you can see all those are taped. And then another great thing that is hard to get on these houses because they're so small and you end up losing a couple inches around them is the service cavity, which is, a great place for all the electric boxes to run so that you're not penetrating your air barrier. That can run continuous all the way through. All of your, and it makes your electrician's life a lot easier too. The electrician can run his boxes, all his electric wires in here. They can go ahead and drywall right over it. Also helps to keep a flush surface for your drywall. On occasion, the Intello will billow out a little bit when you start filling it with dense packed cellulose, so this gives a good base for it. Here you can see where the Intello system and the service cavity run continuous all the way through, and the interior partition walls are actually butted right up against that. So, all the interior walls come after the fact. This stuff can run clear through. And even if you can look down at the base there, where the baseboard is, it can run all the way through from floor to floor. So this is a good spot where you can see the fact that the membrane here is continuous all the way through the house. Kind of a tricky point that happens in these retrofits, where you have to work around, existing conditions. So here you can see where the Intello wraps down, comes behind the framing, and actually wraps down to the 2nd floor below and continues right through. Above the bathroom here, and there's a second system below, there are ducted mini splits. Those are really nice. Because we got the heating and cooling demands as low as possible, we can just put 2 of those in, and those do the entire house for us. And the tubes you can potentially see up top here are for the ERV. So there's two ducts coming in, going to a head unit there, which might look a little different than most normal systems, but that is introducing fresh air into the bedrooms and exhausting stale air out of the house. Something that comes up a lot in these retrofits of existing homes is the structure's already here, and how do you air seal around them to make a continuous air barrier through the house. So you end up having to put the Intello up through the individual joist bays and tape to the joist so that it creates that seal. And on occasion you have these original floors, so you actually cut back the floors by a foot or 2 so that you can run that continuously through. So it just keeps everything nice and open. Over here, to prevent thermal flanking, they actually insulated the first couple joist bays so that you don't have that cold air transferring in through the assembly and into the house. Over here you have another area where they're preventing thermal flanking. Is on this party wall here, you have the outside wall that's cold, and the first couple stud bays here are insulated, and that gets taped to the shared party wall that's here, which has a fluid applied air barrier on it. This area is an adiabatic wall shared with the neighbor's house, so we don't have to do the Intello or the insulation here, but we did want to do a air barrier because the brick party wall is porous and will allow transfer of air through it.
Is this a replicable way to renovate homes, row houses in the city? I mean, can you see something like this being something you would tell other people about, or say?
I think the people just need to be comfortable with, because everyone doesn't have the money to do everything,
Sure.
right? I mean, most people don't. This could be realized by lots of people,
Yeah.
but you just have to have a different frame of mind that all the things you see aren't going to be just right up front, but all the things you don't see are going to be sustained and done well and comfortable. I've never lived in a a properly temperature controlled home ever, right? So the houses I grew up in were always too hot and too cold. My college house, too hot and too cold. My last home, right? So this will be the first house where it's we're actually comfortable year round.